All right.
All right, go ahead.
All right. There you go. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Matt Mihelic. I'm from the Department of Family Medicine at the University of Tennessee Graduate School of Medicine. And I want to explore today how biological systems scale to deal with the systemic entropy that they encounter. And let's start with the Weber-Fechner effect, also known as the Weber-Fechner law, that deals with the thresholds of perception. in the mid 1800s, they were interested in how it is that you can feel a 1 pound addition to a 10-pound load a lot more than you can a 1 pound addition to a 30-pound load. What they found was that the intensity of a sensation is proportional to the logarithm of the intensity of the stimulus causing that. When there's an interaction of the cognitive or the biological with the physical, we see this log normal distribution that is generated. It's a skewed curve. And skedasticity means how skewed a curve is. This is a normal curve, and that's a skewed curve. So when there's an interaction of the cognitive or the biological with the physical, often that curve gets skewed. The Frank-Starling curve of cardiac physiology is a quintessential skewed response curve. The more you stretch cardiac muscle, the stronger it contracts. And this is important because all the blood that gets pumped out of the heart eventually returns on the venous side. It's a closed system, right? And the heart will variably fill with blood that needs to be pumped out, and so each heartbeat is individually calculated by that Frank-Starling stretch mechanism for the measure of blood filling the ventricle. This is a beat-to-beat regulation. That is what you see on the compensatory side of this response curve. However, if you overstretch that muscle, if you stretch the muscle too far, then it doesn't contract as forcefully. And now you're on that decompensation side of the curve. And that you can see is that in a skewed curve, that decompensation side is a real slippery slope of rapid decompensation. If someone were to have a heart attack, and now their heart, like a myocardial infarction, now that heart isn't beating as strongly, then there begins to become a decompensation. Things build up on the venous return side of the heart, and fluid starts to fall out into the lungs. Okay, and that would be like pulmonary edema, congestive heart failure. Okay, and so the system, the body, is going to adapt to this state change with things like excreting a hormone called epinephrine that increases the contractility of the heart, increases the force of contraction. And so that's going to shift the curve a little bit. The body may also put out a beta natriuretic peptide hormone, which causes vasodilation, increasing that vascular space, and again, further decreasing the venous return to the heart. And more venous return you have, the more that heart muscle gets stretched. So you want to reduce that stretch. And another hormone that might be put out into the system would be angiotensin 2, which increases urinary output. And so now you're just kind of urinating out a lot of fluid. And so now what was on the decompensation side of the curve is now on the compensatory side of the curve. And now that's going to restore that beat-to-beat variability for the heart. There's a shifting point of inflection that implies a deterministic decision to adapt. That adaptation now goes from the two-dimensional curve to now you've got a three-dimensional situation with the shifting curve. Let's consider a crystal of calcium to which you're applying pressure. In that pressure over time, as you increase the pressure, that crystal is going to break down. But if that crystal of calcium is in a biological system of a bone, okay, then over time that the crystalline structure of the bone is actually going to strengthen as you increase the pressure. Okay. However, if you increase the pressure too quickly, it will cause that bone to fracture. Okay. But slowly increasing the pressure on the bone over time will lead to adaptive remodeling of the bone that will strengthen it and allow it to withstand the pressure without fracturing. That this threshold response phenomenon can be seen throughout the human biopsychosocial milieu. Consider that psychologically, someone can adapt to and can adapt and continue normal daily function in the face of multiple stressors that come along. But as we all know, too many stressors too quickly will cause that patient to psychologically decompensate. Maybe they've got a new job, they've relocated to a new situation, a new house, maybe an new interpersonal relationship or change in a relationship, car trouble, and they're dealing with all these things. But then one more stress kind of breaks the camel's back. Let's say their dog dies, and now all of a sudden they begin to decompensate. They're on that slippery slope of the right side of the resilience curve here, and so their function decreases significantly. What can be done for this to help that person adapt and get back to responding well? One thing that can be done is we can get that patient some counseling and shift the curve a little bit with that, and maybe start an antidepressant if they need that. And maybe that patient gets a new job that's a whole lot less stressful. And now they're back to a compensatory state where they're able to deal appropriately with stressors. So compensation is a rapid response to a perturbation of the system, whereas adaptation is more of a long-term response. Compensation follows the curve, but adaptation shifts the curve. It's a state change. Compensation can be represented in 2 dimensions, but adaptation in 3 or more dimensions. And so the system geometry can remain unchanged in compensation, but it will change in adaptation. In the parlance of complexity science, this would be like an attractor. That geometry is going to retain information that make it a non-Markovian system, whereas a Markovian system information is not retained, like the compensatory side of the curve. This is a fetal heart monitor of, and this is how we monitor a woman in labor who's going to have a baby. On the top part of this monitor strip, you can see the fetal heart rate. Now, this isn't an EKG. This is just the heart rate of the baby. And normal heart rate is going to be between 110 and 160 beats per minute. We can see that heart rate is variable. It's varying over time, which means that baby is adapting, responding, and or adapting to various stressors that it's encountering. One of those stressors is going to be that mother is in labor, and you can see on the bottom of the curve the uterine contractions. Okay, now if a baby's adapting well to this, we can see accelerations of that fetal heart rate. And so this is a very healthy baby here. We would worry if we were seeing decelerations below like 110. But these are accelerations in response to the uterine contractions. So that's very healthy. But one of the first signs that baby is stressed and in trouble is when you see reduced variability of that fetal heart rate. And now that baby, is not responding either adaptively or compensatory wise to the any of the information that it's encountering, especially the uterine contractions. So another example, let's say that you want to do a study to see, what percentage of people like bananas. Okay, it's an easy one, right? The more people that you ask, the bigger the population that you're going to study, the more accurate your results are going to be. We call this, in statistics, you call this a bigger N for the population size. And the bigger the N, the better the predictive value. Biological systems will increase N through environmental interactions, okay? But they also can improve their predictive value by increasing the complexity of the computational system. Those systems grow and they could add more cells. In computer science, this could mean adding another layer of artificial neurons to a neuromorphic computing system. And we see that happening a lot with artificial neural networks. Each bit of information and each node of the system assembly increases the degrees of freedom of the system and thereby increases the entropy of the system. Entropy is disorder, it's unpredictability, it's a lack of information. That entropy accumulates. So a little bit, it's not a big deal, but it can accumulate and compound logarithmically in the system per the Boltzmann equation. And you can see that eventually the amount of entropy is going to kind of go parabolic there. The logarithmically compounded entropic disorder would eventually overcome the ability of the system to deal with it, leading to systemic decompensation. So there's this theoretical point of predictive randomness, okay, where you're going to have a point of zero predictive value out of the system. But before you ever get there, you're going to have this sweet spot of a point of maximum predictive value, okay? Now, if you continue at this point to add more, a bigger n, because we're used to, we need more information here, or you make the complexity of the computational system bigger, and this is different for every system, but then you can reach a point where you have less than zero predictive value. You're now injecting systemic error, causing predictions that are worse than a random guess. So the entropy scales. So I want to take a moment here to consider scaling of entropy. And so let's consider how long is the coastline of Britain. On the left side, we see the coastline of Britain measured with a ruler of length of 100 kilometers. Now this would be considered the gauge by which you're measuring it. And it'd be kind of like the quantum of information here that you're going by, the granularity of the information you're measuring it by. And so if you're measuring it with a ruler of a gauge of 100 kilometers, the coastline is 2,800 kilometers around. However, if you measure that coastline with the gauge of a ruler of 100 meters, then the length of the coastline is 17,000 kilometers. So as the gauge of the ruler gets smaller, the coastline gets exponentially longer, approaching infinity. And remember that with each measurement, you're having a small amount of entropy coming into the system. And so the granularity of the information is important oftentimes in your calculations. But remember that the more granular the information, the more entropy might be introduced. A biological system can adapt to increasing entropy by shifting the curve. Shifting the curve is the way that a system can scale to compensate for the increased entropy that it encounters. In this case, the curve is being shifted to the left, not to the right. And so you can see you have a much bigger sweet spot here of maximum predictive value. So some concluding points. Biological systems exhibit log normal distributions at their response thresholds. Those log normal distributions are a consequence of the entropy that accumulates in the system via growth and environmental interaction. Shifting of the log normal response curves involves an increase in the dimensionality of the system's source code, or the system's computational system. And finally, shifting of log normal response curves is an adaptive response to the scale of the entropy encountered by the biological system. And so that's how adaptive scaling of skedastic response to biological system entropy occurs. And that's what I have. So I'm glad to entertain any questions that anyone might have.